All right. Hello, everyone. All right, let's get started. Hi, thank you guys so much for joining me today for this Lunch and Learn. We are celebrating National Haiku Day. Yay! It's part of National Poetry Month, but yeah, today's Haiku Day. So, in the spirit of haiku, thank you guys for joining me for this short and sweet Lunch and Learn on the history of haiku. So yeah, let's get started. My name is Megan Jenkins. I am a adult services programmer here at the Porter Library. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So what is haiku? So when you guys think about what haiku is, I think a lot of us think of just like the short, sweet poems that has like certain amount of lines or syllables. So yeah, today I want to go ahead and go a little deeper into that. So if we're looking at what is haiku, just at its like base value, haiku is an unrhymed poetic literary form originating from Japan that is traditionally a 3-line poem with 17 syllables written in 5-7-5 syllable count. So I underline traditionally right off the bat because a lot of haikus that you see today, both in Japan and other cultures and countries that have adopted the poetic, like literary art form, don't necessarily follow the syllable count now. But traditionally, it was in a pretty like strict like 5-7-5 syllable count. And I have an example here from one of the founding not like founding fathers, like originators, or one who really popularized the art form, Matsuyo Basho, who wrote a haiku that's called "The Summer's Grasses, All That Remain of Soldiers' Lost Heroic Dreams." Now, I have this translation up because it's nice that it has the 5-7-5 count, but I do want to like note that not all of the translations for even this haiku have it in the 5-7-5 for English. So just kind of something to keep in mind. I'll probably touch more on that in a minute again as well. But yeah, haiku often focuses on images from nature and emphasizes simplicity, intensity, and directness of expression that is usually meant to depict the essence of a specific moment in time. So if we go back for just a second to our soldiers' lost heroic dreams moment, you see the summer grasses, and then you have that brief just pause moment where summer grasses is nature. It's showing an image, and then you often have a thought after, and it's just depicting a moment that usually has nature imagery attached to it. Today poets have began to gradually depart or break free from the traditional syllable count, the 5-7-5, in favor of depicting images images as succinctly as possible. Like I said, the traditional 5-7-5 syllable count isn't so like, it's not as rigid. It's still a specific form that has a certain style that people do kind of adhere to, as far as like their own form of like syllable count or other meter. But yeah, however, the philosophy of haiku has been preserved, the focus on a brief moment in time, a use of provocative, colorful images, an ability to read in one breath, and a sense of sudden enlightenment. So that was kind of the main point when I came across this poem, where I believe Basho was on a journey somewhere. He came across a field that historically had a battlefield on it, and just basically saw not like remains, but just like the remnants or the ruins of it, essentially, like what was left behind of a battle that once was, I believe. Translation note: original Japanese haikus are often divided into 17 mora, a Japanese unit of syllable weight, and arranged in a single vertical line. However, in English, there is no exact equivalent to the mora unit. As a result, in English and other languages, haikus are most frequently adopted into 3 lines of verse, usually unrhymed, composed of 575 syllables, adding up to 17 syllables total. So just to go back again to our example here, how it's translated into English is the 3 lines, that 575. That is not how it's written in Japanese. As Japanese, not only do they have their own writing systems, it's also done vertically, not horizontally. And I actually have an example here. So we have this other haiku by Matsuya Bosho, an old pond, a frog jumps in, the sound of water. And so I kind of have the romanization at the top, and then I have the Japanese on the second line, and then English on the third. But we have our lovely youth services children's librarian, Miss Yoshiko, who was wonderful enough to help set it up into how it would be in Japanese. So thank you so much. Shout out for that. But yeah, as far as like the haiku itself, you see the image, the nature of an old pond, a frog, and then the sound of water. This is probably one of his most famous poems. So yeah, that's kind of like what haiku is as far as a poetic literary device. So let's kind of delve into the history just a little bit. I won't go too in depth because in the spirit of haiku, I won't keep you guys here forever. But just this is like a crash course, just very brief introductory overview into the history of haiku. I like to reference Madoka Mayuzumi, I believe is how her name is pronounced. She's a Japanese haiku poet. She spoke at a special lecture in Romania, I believe, at the 15th Symposium on Japanese Language and Education in Europe, August 2010. And when I came across this article that she had written on behalf of that, she really wrote a powerful statement. She said quite a few powerful statements regarding the history of haiku and its deep roots in Japanese culture. So despite its succinct form, haiku contains the essence of Japanese people's aesthetics, views of nature, philosophy, thoughts, and sentiments. As a rule, haiku must have a kigo, a word connotating a season, and are rendered in 3 lines of 5, 7, and 5 syllables each. The kigo is a reflection of the Japanese people's sensitivity to the changing seasons, our love of nature, and our respect for form. These qualities are seen not just in haiku, but in many other manifestations of Japan's traditional culture. So I like to preface that because while we see it in as a Western society, as a poetic literary device, it does have deep roots in a country and culture, and it's really rich and great. So it's always nice when we look at certain poetic literary devices that don't have English origin, so to speak. It's nice to pay respect and really seek to understand the tradition and cultural roots attached behind it. So history and origin. It first emerged in the 17th century Japanese literature, but it wasn't known as haiku until the 19th century. And I believe reason for that is it started out, haiku is part of a longer form of poem, but the Spark Notes version is that the first paragraph or first lines of a much longer poem became haiku itself. So the term haiku is derived from the first element of the word hakai. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. A humorous form of renga, meaning linked verse poem. So renga is actually the longer poem, and then basically that first top part eventually became the hoku, which is, of course, and the second element of the word hoku, the initial first stanza of renga. So the hoku served to begin a longer poem, renga, by establishing a season, often with a pair of seasonal images. It had to mention it in its 3 lines, such as subject as the season, time of day, and the dominant features of the landscape, making it almost an independent poem. So because of how the Ringa poems were structured, the Haiku served that top part, and then they kind of just combined it and made haiku, which is its own thing now. So continuing onward. Unlike the rest of a Ringa sequence, which was composed with multiple poets collaboratively, so often Ringa poems were written by 2 or more people or persons by linking stanzas comprising of lines of 5, 7, 5, 7, and then 7 syllables each or so. The haiku was often created by a single poet working alone. So over time, the haiku began to be appreciated for its own worth and became its own craft, so kind of separate from Ringa, formerly mastered by poets such as Matsuo Basho, who we saw, he's known as the master, and then Yosa Busan, who is known as the painter poet because he was not only a poet during the Edo era, I believe, he was also a painter as well. So yeah, that's just a brief history as far as its roots and background with Japanese culture. So how does haiku kind of come into Western literature? That has an interesting story. So in 1905, a French poet, I believe it's Paul Louis Cocu. I'm sorry, I'm not French. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. We'll say Paul. French poet Paul became one of the first European translators of the form, converting many short Japanese verses into his native French language. This began the popularization of haiku in Europe. During World War I and World War II, and the rise of the modernism literary movement, haikus were gradually adopted and celebrated by Imagist poets. And Imagist poets was part of Imagism, a poetic movement that relied on the resonance of concrete images drawn in precise colloquial language rather than traditional poetic diction and meter, which I think kind of ties quite a bit with haiku as is, just because both are so image-based. I think it just flowed naturally. And poets such as Ezra Pound, H.D. and T.E. Home were big poets. I think Ezra Pound was really the big one. He's at least the one I have a haiku for. In this context, the haiku was appreciated for its linguistic and sensory economy. Most notably, Pound's In a Station of the Metro, though not intended as a haiku, adapts the sparse visual style of the Japanese form. And I actually have part of that here. The apparition of these faces in the crowd, petals on a wet black bough. That was written to, they're now called the Poetry Foundation, and they have the Poetry Magazine. And so that was published in the April 1913 edition. Conclusion, the spirit of haiku. I always like to end on a nice note, so I don't know. Back to Madoka Mayuzumi. Like I said, she really had such great things to say about haiku and the spirit of it. Comprising a haiku means giving a voice to the other, appearing before our eyes and taking a slice of Earth's life. By doing so, we ourselves tap into the cosmic source of life and create a synchronicity and fraternity with other living beings. This is also a process of self-discovery, a journey to the depths of one's own heart. It is through the other that we discover things about ourselves. And I really like what she says here. Culture and art may not be practical, but modern society has lost so much in its relentless pursuit of the practical lifestyle. By embracing the world that remains unexpressed, the haiku attains unity with the fullness of the natural world, which can help us find solutions to conflicts between peoples, environmental degradation, and many other problems besetting modern society. I really liked what she said about culture and art may not be practical. They may not be the like cooking, the having like roof over your head, like they may not be seen as like these necessities, but how often do we like rely on art to give us imagination and life, and to be able to express parts of the human condition that can only really be felt through some artistic medium. And I think the root she was saying is it is an art form that combines the natural world, nature elements that you can see with concepts that are more internal that may not be seen but are felt. And so I really like how she brought those two together and really brought the spirit of haiku on what the intentions are for making a haiku. So I say, if you want to make your own haiku, you can start by looking at the world around you. What types of nature do you see? It is spring, although I think Virginia is convinced it's summer with how hot it's been. But starting there, looking outside, and then writing down kind of what you see and maybe how you feel, or taking elements that you've already been thinking about and what are some visual ways you could express that, so to speak. Because I believe for Ezra Pound with his poem, he wrote part of that. He was in Paris and he noticed, I believe, just like petals from the metro or whatnot, or just wet petals, and that really like struck out to him. So yeah, thank you guys so much for sticking around with me. If you guys are interested in learning more about haiku, I do have some recommended reads up here. They are free to check out with your library card. You can just go online to librarypoint.org, search up haiku, and you can see just kind of like what other books, or just any book really. But those are just the ones that I saw that I really liked. If you guys are interested in sharing your writing for haiku, we are having an Inklings meeting specifically for poetry next week, where you can come by, bring your poem if you want to share. That takes place April 23rd. It's at the Porter Branch from 6 to 7:30. But by all means, feel free to also go to any of our Inklings if you're interested in pursuing creative writing in any form of way. So yeah. And then some resources if you guys are interested in learning just more about poetry in general. I put up the Tokyo Foundation. They're the ones that had the article that I was referencing today with Madoka Mayuzumi. And then there's also poets.org. They are like the Academy of American Poetry, or American Academy of Poets. Oh gosh, I can't remember off the top of my head now. The Academy of American Poetry, I believe. And then there is also the Poetry Foundation. There's also Britannica as well. I was using Britannica for some of these historical sources as well. And then there's the Haiku Foundation. If you're specifically interested in haiku, I believe they were founded in around 2012. So yeah, I definitely say check them out. Now, if you guys are interested in Japanese language learning, we do offer through your library card, you can create a free account and access two online resources, one called Mango Language and the other is called Transparent Language. Mango Language is great if you are kind of more on a casual learner, want to learn some basic sentences and phrases right off the bat. That's a great place to start. It's very repetitive with the same type of exercise. It has an app. Both of them actually have apps. You'll just want to create your account by going onto librarypoint.org and then clicking underneath the research tab. You want to click on A to Z resources, and then you'll want to create the account through using our links because it's going to link up with your library card. And then once you create the account, then you can just download the apps and then use the email and password that you create. So yeah, Mango is great. Transparent Language is also great. I think this one's the more academic one. It's going to have more variety of exercises, and probably for those who are more serious in their language learning journey, not quite to the same degree as Rosetta Stone, but kind of resembles a little bit of Rosetta Stone, in my mind at least. And same thing, that one you can create a free account there. So yeah, if you guys are interested in language learning, those are great. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you guys get to write some haikus and have a wonderful day, and happy Haiku Day.